How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and test out some of the new mods I've added. This is the first one up. It's the IX5. So it's the same guy who's been doing like the heavy wrecker, the normal wrecker, the mini wrecker, that 0.65 kind of dual rear axle small truck thing. And yeah, now they've added this, which is pretty cool. It's basically like an old school Jeep. As for all the attachments and stuff you can add, there's generally kind of two flavours. You've got the custom stuff that they're adding, so there's a few custom engines, a few custom suspensions, a few custom gearboxes, and then along with that you've got three lots of like normal engines that are unlocked within the game. Mine are currently locked at the minute because I'm on my second playthrough. Yeah, gearboxes, you've got like the SnowRunner, the free range, or freeway and high range, thinking of me free range chickens. Yeah, and then suspension again, you've got like the normal suspension, raised, even more raised. There's a special crawler suspension as well. So yeah, overall there's quite a nice amount of options, but then you're not absolutely flooded and bombarded with options. Like the tyres, for example, there's a pretty good selection, but they seem to have taken most of the standard tyres away, so which is good for me personally, because scrolling through them on the PS menu is painfully slow. And that's not to say at all that that's the modders' problems, or that having a shed load of tyres to choose from is a bad thing. It's just something that I have to scroll through once I've picked a set. Like I said, that's why I live and die by a set, 'cause it's like spending another 5 minutes scrolling down the menu again. But yeah, this thing adds a pretty decent selection of tyres. The biggest tyres I got on now as well, like the quasi sort of monster truck kind of tyres. These are the studded ones as well. The nice thing is the suspension. I've got like the slightly raised suspension, but not the fully raised. And it lets you, like, you can still have the biggest tyres even with the slightly lowered suspension. You can't have the biggest tyres if you've got just the normal, but the crawler, the slightly raised and the raised, it lets you. Yeah, engine-wise as well, I've been testing out a few of them, and for I believe right now in the footage I've got the OP engine in, so that's got a hell of a lot of power to weight and all the rest of it. And it's a good engine, no doubt. Like, it probably makes this feel a tad mental, really, because particularly with the suspension, and it's got like kind of big fat balloon tyres. The thing doesn't also weigh a lot either, and yeah, it's not like completely ridiculous OP or anything like that, but because it is quite springy on its suspension and all the rest of it, the OP engine does kind of help exacerbate that situation where, like, if you get a bit of speed going, you can get a bit bouncy and start flopping around and all sorts. I went and put the SE engine in. It's like special edition, so it's got SE in brackets, and that's toned down a little bit, and to be honest, that was actually a pretty nice engine. It actually felt certainly like a nice amount of power to it, but still pretty in line with the actual game itself. Like, it didn't, it's more the fact that, like, the various coding and characteristics they've got within this game to achieve the game, the higher you go with the engines, the more it kind of highlights how they've had to get to these characteristics. Does that make sense? Like, you know, as I've said before, it is all coding. There isn't actually an engine there or a gearbox and etc. It all just has to kind of give that feel to it. And yeah, a lot of the fast stuff, like, I was looking forward to some faster stuff in mods, and now they've arrived. I certainly still appreciate a lot of the mods are just slightly tweaked, or they've got better gearboxes, smoother gearboxes, all sorts. But yeah, fast stuff in general in this game just doesn't sit too well. It kind of, like, you start to feel the mechanics, like the fabric of the mechanics starts to sort of break apart a bit once you start flying too fast. Oh yeah, it's got like the Dukes of Hazzard Dixie horn or whatever it is with it, which is pretty cool. I don't mind that. Yeah, going for a little drive on the logs. And again, another nice thing about this, it's got very good clearance at the front and everything. It's all, yeah, the bumpers are, like, you can add a few different bumpers, but it's a nice compact bumper on the front. As well, when you go into the menu, you can see, like, I've got the roll bar, fog lights, and the rear tyre. You have to go into frame add-ons first, add, like, the bull bars that also have the fitting to have that spare tyre, and then you can select a spare tyre. They're all locked until you add that. And same with, yeah, those fog light things I've got on the top. You have to add the bar first, or it won't let you add those. I believe now, sorry, I was just driving around then, yeah, with the OP engine. now I've just gone back to the garage, I believe, and switched it to the slightly saner engine. Forget that little drift there, because that's just kind of as I was full lock and I dropped it into high range. That's not really this thing's fault then. But yeah, as you can see now, I put it in high gear, I'm in auto. I think this is a fair speed. I mean, I was probably getting up to like 30, 35 mile an hour at the end then. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't travelling like a maniac. Again, now I'm in auto. It's slowly clicking up through the gears, but it's nothing too erratic or mental. Like, it actually feels pretty, yeah, kind of in line with the game, what you'd sort of expect with this kind of truck. And they've not gone too mad with all the tyres and suspension and everything. Like, I used to have an off-road show next to me, and yeah, you used to see, like, every other thing had tyres this big and raised suspension and all that stuff. I appreciate they're obviously not standard issue, but again, in the off-roading world, people do a hell of a lot of customising, and yeah, this has only really got like a bit of a lift kit and some bigger off-road tyres, so it's certainly within the realms of possibility. The truck itself is pretty light. It's I don't really know. It'd be hard to tell if it could do with more weight or not. There's probably situations where it could do with more weight, but there might be other situations where that kind of upsets the whole situation. I mean, if you look at it itself, it's got no doors, basically no roof or whatever. It's not going to weigh a lot, really, anyway. Yeah, as you can see though, for off-roading, going through the mud and that, it's quite nice for the most part. It just kind of, you still feel it in the mud and that, and it does hold it back a little bit, but it doesn't just automatically drop you down to that 2 mile an hour thing where it's just like, that's the end of it. So it does actually keep its pace pretty well, but as I said, particularly with the special edition engine in, it's not flying along to begin with, so just overall I think it's a pretty nice balance. I don't think it's particularly unrealistic. It's got pretty decent sized tyres on it, it's not a very heavy truck, etc. So I think cruising along some, you know, 10-inch mud patches or whatever isn't going to be the end of the world. Next up is this thing, the Frogs SXS. It's fun for a little laugh. You can't have any trailers with it, but you can see straight away the biggest issue is it's a bloody noisy sod, and yeah, it's just that same kind of engine noise, almost just blipped over and over on repeat, which, again, if you're just messing around with it for 10-15 minutes, not really going to be the end of the world. It would kind of drive me mad though, anything longer than that. And yeah, it just started to do my head in. I've already turned the volume down. I did it in the game when I was actually getting this footage anyway, but I've also turned the clip volume down on this footage because it's still bloody loud, and even now you can still hear it ringing away. Apart from that though, if you actually take a little ganders at the vehicle itself, I mean, yeah, it's just like some little off-road buggy thing, like with a roll cage wrapped around it. It does go off-roading pretty well, to be fair. This field normally slows quite a lot of stuff down, and this thing ticks along pretty nicely. I didn't think it would do, but yeah, it ain't knocking any trees over anytime soon. But because it has got like wheels in each corner, I know that's sort of the general concept, but I mean they actually like are in each corner. They stick out further than anything else. So for the most part, it's like if you drive it up to a wall, its wheels are going to sort of catch and try and start climbing up the wall. These sort of rocks and stuff, it climbs up these pretty damn well. As for all the mods and that on it, they're pretty simple. You got like an upgraded engine, that's about it. You got a console version of the winch. You can add something in the frame add-on. I didn't really see what it adds on, but it just said a load of supplies. And then yeah, for the tyres, mostly they're smaller tyres than this, but fortunately the last set you could choose from were like, well yeah, this size. They're like the paddle tyres, so they seem to grip onto these rocks pretty well, which I like, and I was able to climb up here. The other reason, I think, just in general, having the biggest tyres, this thing's not that massive to begin with, and with the slightly smaller tyres, it's like the smaller your tyres are, everything else is bigger in sort of comparison and relatively speaking, so it's just the bigger tyres you can get, really. It's it just has an easier time climbing over the general obstacles you're going to get in the game. I do like the fact that it's easy to tip back to its wheels, and so is that iX5 as well. They're both rollable, but they're both, as long as you just fling a winch like out from underneath it kind of thing, it very easily tip back to the wheels. You can see now they're driving along the road. I'm only just flooring it there in high range. I wasn't blipping the throttle or anything. It was a little bit violent and mental. It kind of wanted to veer off to the left then the right. Again, I could tone this down to the stock engine. I didn't really try that myself so far, but then you can see It just kind of almost got so much grip itself, it booted it, did a big wheelie and flipped itself over. I did have a little go at this yesterday as well. Again, apologies for not doing a video yesterday. My brothers ended up coming around, both of them, so we just sat up all night talking bollocks as you do, and yeah, that was it. By the time they left, it was pretty damn late. I got on to testing these. I tested this and again that Frog's SXS. And another thing they've added that I'll show you pretty soon in the game is they've added 2 new caravan things, which is very good because it's basically what I've been asking and hoping for a while, is like a scout repair trailer basically. It's got a little bit of spare fuel with it. It's kind of like a mini version of a maintenance trailer but with less fuel. Yeah, so they're pretty good. I'll have a look at them in a sec. This thing is actually pretty smooth driving down that runway. A lot of trucks start getting a bit erratic and they start trying to just veer left and right for no apparent reason. This actually stayed very planted and smooth and went pretty straight all the way down. Again, must be something she said. Yeah, jumped off the cliff. It lands back on its wheels a fair amount. It's one of them, obviously, sort of how long's a piece of string. If you get the wrong type of roll, you're going to end up on your roof. But as I said, if you ever do, winching it back over is pretty simple. As far as like off-roading and stuff goes, climbing back out of here, it was a little bit slow in the water there, but nothing too slow. I think in the water it's kind of trying to float. I believe when I was trying it yesterday as well, it was kind of floating, kind of not, but the point is, it's like, as soon as you start going in the water, it's certainly not just planted on the seabed where it can still keep all its grip. The tyres are clearly like trying to make it float to a degree where you lose a lot of your grip, basically. You lose a lot of your grip because your weight's gone. But for the most part, climbed out there, no issues. It's climbing along round here, even managed to get up this last little bit, which I've tried a few trucks here recently. I remember driving up here in the Yar 87, which I believe got up there eventually, but it was a bit tricky. This thing, because it doesn't weigh a lot and the tyres are pretty, like, there's a nice width to them and everything, and they are the studded tyres, it's, yeah, got pretty nice grip. It's actually very nice in the snow. By comparison, say that Helion ISV or whatever I tried the other day, that didn't feel as strong in snow. That probably felt better in mud. This thing, even though it is decent in mud, it feels pretty nice, and I would say fairly realistic in the snow. Even when I was cutting over from like the garage to the runway, that part there is quite sort of notorious for slowing practically everything down. A P12 can barely get over there without nearly stalling and getting stuck and all sorts. This thing, it didn't rip across there. You can see now it's not absolutely just tear-assing along the mountain, but at the same time it doesn't feel like it's being completely held back at 2 miles an hour. It's just kind of what you'd expect, really, I think. Again, if you had a Jeep like this with this tyre, this setup and everything, I think it would be able to motor along snow at about this kind of range where it's not going to sink a hell of a lot because it's got a nice wide sort of tread pattern and everything. And again, I believe after this I just left, after I originally did it, I just left that special edition engine in. So it does feel a little bit more balanced. Or sorry, I did put the OP engine in for flying down the runway. Yeah, and last up is, had to get the old goddamn horse of a vehicle out. That's one of the caravans you can get, which this one's got, is it 400 repair points and 100 litres of fuel. Or you've got this one at the bottom as well. And this one, it says 601, but I think it's 600 litres of, 600 repair points and 150 litres of fuel. And again, it's I just think it's pretty cool because I've been wanting something like this for a while. Again, it's like a scout version of a maintenance trailer. And quite a lot of the mods that they've been adding like at the minute as well these days, you can add, like that iX5, that can have normal trailers or scout trailers, so you could get this caravan on that iX5, but you could also get a normal maintenance trailer on that. The actual weight of the caravans as well, they're not ridiculously weighted, but there is definitely some there. Like, it's not like they're just a piece of paper you're towing along as well. But yeah, as you can see, for the most part, it's just nice that you're able to do this. I have dragged a few maintenance trailers around with a loaf before, but yeah, for the most part, I'm better off in that situation than just sticking the loaf in the back of the Dolphin and winch it, like connecting the maintenance trailer to the Dolphin and going cruising around that way. But certainly, as and when I'm doing other playthroughs and stuff, it's nice that I can bring some scouts that can actually, again, it's just another use they have. Good old tiny little turning circle on the lathe, do a little U-turn and we're off back. Because if I go off into the middle of nowhere and just abandon this caravan, I'll have to leave the mod on until I return that caravan, otherwise it'll say mods missing and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, just another quick one, if you go down into the menu, you can lift the bonnet up and down on the iX5, you can also move the windscreen up and down, which is, yeah, cool. Why not? Yeah, the iX5 I'll definitely be using more. I think it's just a well-rounded, put-together mod. The Puppy Master mods usually are, and the same with this Frog mod. It's good for a laugh, but it's just too noisy at the minute, so I probably won't be using it long term, but it is still worth having a go. I'd say everything's worth trying, really. Yeah, that's about it for today, though. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon members, and I'll be back soon.